Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Drouin and the Roulement Staircase, the most historic literary staircase in France. This is where the Prix Goncourt is awarded every year. It's the finest example of French literature each year in November.
And it's worth a lot of book sales.
A very worthwhile place to celebrate an event that is dear to all of our hearts, the 50th anniversary of the Judgement of Paris wine tasting. Just up the road from here, a few stones throw away from Drouin in 1976 on the 24th of May. We're very delighted to welcome you here this evening at the end of our Iberian Wine Tours journey through the Loire Valley to celebrate Stephen Spurrier, a very dear friend of ours who set up the Judgement of Paris wine tasting in 1976 and created before that the Académie du Vin and the Cave de la Madeleine, where James and I both worked. We're delighted to be able to commemorate and celebrate the tasting on a night like tonight in Paris, at the heart of the French establishment. And why? Because we're drinking a glass of English sparkling wine. And what better way to remember an event where the establishment was turned on its head, and the idea that what was always the best way to go about things would always be the best way to go about things. After the Judgement of Paris, that was no more. The powers that be in France were a little put out. Stephen had set up a tasting that accidentally put them against the Californians, of which there are some representatives in the room this evening, thank you. And the wine world turned on its head a little bit. So we're delighted to celebrate that memory with you. And in this place, to have a glass of English sparkling wine, I think Stephen would be particularly delighted to thumb his nose a little bit at our hosts. And probably one of the few occasions that hopefully before the end of the introduction we'll have had two English sparkling wines in the heart of the French wine establishment. So we're very delighted to have you here. The wine is called Bella, from Stephen's one of his two last wine ventures before he died in 2021. One of which was the winery in Bride Valley in Dorset, from which this is produced. This was the wine that was served at our 10th anniversary in Barcelona with Stephen and Bella, who was pouring the bottle. This is the 2018 Rosé Sparkling, and we just thought it would be a very appropriate way to remember the Judgement of Paris with you. So thank you for coming.
Cheers.
Could I hand over to James for some more thoughts about your memories of Stephen and
I think so. Just to say that perhaps my purpose here, or the reason I'm here, is that I did actually work for Stephen for 6 years, I think 6 or 7 years, starting in 1981 and finishing in 88. Pretty well just before he actually sold the Cave de la Madeleine. So I was at the Cave de la Madeleine. Started at the bottom end of the ladder and ended up managing the shop for 2 or 3 years after that. But the things that I learned from Stephen, I think it was his open-mindedness. I think that's important to remember. He was actually open to everything, and he was as excited about tasting a Grand Cru Classé from Bordeaux as he was about tasting a little country wine from somewhere in the Auvergne. So Stephen was always open to everything, hence a little bit the Judgement of Paris. He was interested in finding out about Californian wines, seeing how they fared. It wasn't really a competition, but it just everything turned on its head. And it really put Californian wines on the map. But it wasn't done initially in a sort of competitive sense. It was more an open-minded sense. So Stephen, sadly, is no longer with us. He's left quite a strong legacy, including various people around the wine world that worked for him at one point in time and now have some sort of input again in the wine world. Bride Valley and the Académie du Vin. So I think the Académie du Vin probably is amongst, or if not the strongest of his legacies, including now the publication of the house that now produces all these books. There is an Académie du Vin library which produces wine books. They've produced this one, but they produce a lot of others in a time and age when the written word on paper and in book form is pretty hard to come by and to perpetuate. So We owe quite a lot to Stephen, and it's a fine thing to celebrate his life and the Judgement of Paris here at Drouin today.
Thank you, James. So moving on from that and picking up on that, a couple of words from myself. I was lucky enough to work at the Académie du Vin in the late 1980s. And I would just echo what James says and say from my own perspective, it opened doors that I never managed to think could exist. About connections in the wine world, from new places to old, from old friends to new, from the way things should be done to the way they could be done. It opened my eyes to the fact that wine was to be shared, was to be put together, and it was all to be about the story of why what's in the glass is in the glass with you. Not technical, although technical is important, but the story behind why it's there and why are you there is perhaps the most important thing. And that's what the Académie du Vin was all about. As James says, openness, curiosity, and I think a word that resonates for those of you that travel with us a lot, conviviality. And the Académie du Vin was very much about the convivial approach to wine, which I think we could all echo and support. As James said, Stephen's two final legacies were the wine that we're drinking in our glass from Bride Valley and the Académie du Vin Publishing House. So we thought it would be appropriate to share with you this evening the initial and just very recent publication of a book, Coffee Table. You'll not thank me for what it weighs in your case, but the Judgement of Paris Special Anniversary Edition, which we'll present to each of you this evening. So we thought that would be a very appropriate way to remember Stephen, remember the judgment, and for you to take a little of the judgment home with you back to wherever you drink your next wine.
Oh.
So I think we should toast Stephen, shouldn't we?
I think we should. Stephen Spurrier.
Stephen Spurrier.